Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So the next sequel that we're going to be covering is one that I've been wanting to cover since we started this podcast because it's in the lore of sequels that people talk about. When it comes to the good sequels, the bad sequels, it's more the latter, but it doesn't mean it's not a lot of fun. It has Christopher Lee. It has the amazing, one of my faves, Sybil Danning. I would love to chat with her one of these days. L.A. Bounty is such an underrated cop flick. She plays like a Cobra-like, Stallone-like character in the movie, and it's pretty awesome. And Nick will be back. Nick, our bad sequel expert, he'll be back next week. And for the Howling 2, I chatted with special effects royalty, Rob Berman. Wow, talk about, when I go into these interviews, I do as much research as I can find online. What I want to do is when I talk to people, I want to really hear stories and things for the first time. Because I found early on when I started this, when I knew too much, the stories weren't hitting me the way they should because I just read them. And I remembered every detail of the story that I heard. Maybe they were on another podcast or another show. So yeah, it was so cool talking to Rob right in the beginning when I asked that question always, hey, why did you start your journey out to Hollywood? And he's like, well, I'm probably one of the rare people that could say this. And you'll hear it right in the beginning. His family dates back to, in special effects, the Wolfman. His grandfather was a sculptor. He wanted to get into Hollywood. He got a gig sculpting the cane. And then his grandfather, his great uncle was working, it's so cool. I'll let him tell the story because I think it's so neat. And then his father was working on like Planet of the Apes and so many amazing movies. And then you have Rob, he finally, he knew everything about his dad's shop. His dad used to call in school and say, hey, where's this part? And he'd be like, oh, Dad, it's in this drawer. And then he finally gave in and, he started, in the biz. And he said his first time that he remembers like fully being on a set, like sort of on his own, was The Thing. So what a great way to get that started. And yeah, he had so many credits. It's so cool when you talk to people in special effects. You think, oh, these are the credits they worked on. But no. He worked on so many. Like his studio worked on Ghostbusters, but he didn't get a credit. Because there's only so many credits, and he said they didn't want to use another spool of film, which is great. But his credits include things like Batman Returns, Goonies, Teen Wolf, Howling 2. Man, so many cool flicks. We talk about this really neat movie that he worked on with Bruce Dern, which I highly recommend. Listen to that part, really cool. Talk about his time working on Canon Films. Talking about working with his dad, after, he was always working with his dad, but his dad directed it and wrote a movie called Meet the Hollowheads. It was neat when I talked to Lee Ehrenberg, who will be one of our next interviews. He was in that movie and he had some cool memories of working with Rob's dad. But yeah, so do me a favor. If you're new here, please like, subscribe, follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. If you use YouTube, go on there, search our name, boom, subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notified when any video stuff comes out. Like this will be out in unedited video form. I mean, it might be a few dog barks that I couldn't get out, but who cares? It's raw, but it's fun. It's cool to be able to see the person. But if you're in your car, you can't be watching, so just keep listening. We appreciate it. And then also I'll put the link to Rob and his wife Jennifer, which their love story of how they met is pretty neat. Obviously, it's like a Hollywood story. She's a costumer. He's in special effects. And they have a company called Rubberware, which is really, really neat. So he talks about that. And I'll put all the links in the episode notes so you can be able to check it out. And without further ado, here is Rob Berman. So how did you get even started? Where'd you grow up? I always like to hear the people's beginnings, of course. So are you a California kid or where are you from? I'm in Jersey.
Oh, you're in Jersey. Okay. Well, I was born here essentially to you in Los Angeles, but Glendale, which is a little suburb in Los Angeles. And, I spend my whole life pretty much in and around the San Fernando Valley. And, if you think about it, here's really good images of what my experience was. Did you watch The Wonder Years? The TV show?
Oh, yeah.
Years?
Oh, yeah.
That was my early childhood. Did you watch that 70s show?
Yep.
That was my high school years.
That was your high school years? Yeah.
Yeah. After that, I got in the industry and my whole life was different.
So how'd that happen? Since you grew up, Glendale's not too far. There's a bunch of people that I've talked to that are like from that area. So what was it a movie that you saw, or like how did you get into working with polyurethane?
I'm one of the very few people that can actually say this story this way. Actually, now there are a few more, but my whole life I was the only one. In 1941, my grandfather, who was an artist, basically sculptor, did monuments and things in the Midwest. He he moved to Hollywood thinking he might be able to get into, film and do some stuff. So he got a job making a few things here and there, but then he got a job making a cane, a silver-headed wolf's head cane for 1941's The Wolfman. He
Oh my
met Jack
god.
Pierce, who did the Wolfman makeup, and Jack said, "Well, you mold and sculpt and paint and do all those things ahead of time. I build up right on the actor. Is if there was a way you could do stuff and not tell anybody, I could keep you busy." So my grandfather started making all the stuff for like the Universal horror sequels. Whenever you
Wow.
saw the mummy in a bad mask, that was probably my uncle. But he did like House of Frankenstein, the Wolfman frozen in ice, and all of that kind of stuff.
But he
And
couldn't tell anybody that was him. He's working. He was just in the shadows.
oh,
The other guy was his
yeah,
name was on everything.
pretty much. Jack
Okay.
Jack was very secretive and all of that stuff, and he would do all this stuff. But he kept my grandfather busy. Who My grandfather was not a
Yeah.
limelight person or anything. He just wanted to do the work and make money and feed his family. That's all he cared about.
Yeah.
You know. But when my father was a child, he would have to help my grandfather in his workshop during summer vacation and things like that. And so my dad learned about making molds and casting parts and doing all that stuff. And he would assist my grandfather on different things. So he was assisting him on a job where my grandfather was working for the Dawn Post Mask Company, making a full size, well, not
Okay.
full size, but like
Yeah.
half size King Kong, and for a museum in Niagara Falls. So he was working on that, and the guys in the shop there said, "Hey, they're looking for an apprenticeship program thing for people to sign up at 20th Century Fox. You ought to go check it out. I think today's like the last day to do it." So my dad just took off on the job, went down to 20th Century Fox, and out of 100 people, he and three other guys got chosen. Well, my dad got chosen because he had experience making molds and working in a lab. And back then, if you were in the makeup lab at Fox, that's what you did. You did make noses and things like that for all your character stuff and whatnot. So he was there for about 6 months. This is in like 1964, 65, something like that.
Planet
Uh,
of the Apes? Is that around Planet of the Apes time or a little before then?
Before, in
Okay.
fact, my dad was sweeping the floors in the lab as an apprentice, and Ben Nye comes in and says, "Oh, we've got a job to do, and it's going to be the most amazing thing we've ever done, and it's nobody's ever done anything like this before. We need all the best guys. Who can we get?" And who did the list of Adrian Messenger? Who did that? And well, those are the Westmores. Well, let's call the Westmores. And my dad was like, John Chambers did all the lab work on that, and they're like, "Well, do you know how to get a hold of him?" "Oh, yeah, he's my neighbor. I can get you his number and all that." So they called John Chambers and brought John Chambers in, and he went in and met with him, and he comes out of the office with a script and looks at my dad and he goes, "We're gonna win a fucking Oscar, boy." And it was Planet of the Apes. And so John and my
Wow.
dad started the whole project on a like 4 foot by 8 foot table in the back of the lab at Fox, and that was the whole
That's really
beginning of that.
cool.
So by the
That's
time, and I
insane.
was I was 4 at the time. So by the time I was out of high school, or late in high school, I noticed all my friends were getting jobs and making money, and I was like, "Well, I want to make money. I don't really want a job, but I want to make money." So I tried being a janitor for a while, working nights, and that really sucked. It was terrible. And I tried being a dishwasher at an ice cream parlor because all my friends worked at the ice cream parlor. So I'll go work with them, and that really sucked, you know. So so I came back and I told my dad. I said, you know, your shop is a mess. What if I cleaned your shop at night and then you could come into a shop the next day, a nice clean day, and we'll come in like every other day. So that's what we did. We we would clean his shop at night, and he would come in the next day, and then I'd be in school. You know, I was in 11th, 12th grade. I was senior in high school, and all of a sudden I would get a note. They would somebody would come in with a note to the teacher, and they'd take it. Can Rob Berman go to the office, please? And so I'd have to go to the office. What do you want? What did I do? And it's a phone call for you. And it would be my dad. He'd be saying, where'd you put this? Where'd you put that? You know, I'd be like, well, it's over here. It's over there. I never saw it. I don't know what you're talking about, whatever. And then he'd say, well, come in after school now. And I'm like, well, you know, I was going to go, my friends after. No, I need you after school. So I started coming in after school. And then when I graduated high school, I just kind of stayed. And then I was full time. And then I was kind of the foreman of the shop because I was the only one that knew where everything was and kept everything running. So I did all of that stuff for a couple of years. And then just a little bit after I graduated, the year after I graduated, he was going to lay me off. We'd done Happy Birthday to Me, My Bloody Valentine, The Beast
Oh,
Within, and
wow.
Cat People. And then he lays me off. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. You know, I'd been making like $500 a week. I was rich, you know. And so then he got a phone call from a friend of his that said he needed somebody to run foam latex on a show. And I'm like, well, or my dad's like, well, take my son. He's been running the foam for me. And that was the first thing I learned to do that I was kind of hireable to do, you know. So I learned to do with foam latex and whatnot. So I went over in the interview, me and my best friend, who were kind of partners at the time, and we interviewed for the job. Oh yeah, okay. Have you ever run big amounts of foam? No, we run some large amounts. You know, some of the big mixers. You know, they were like almost 500 grams of latex. So we mixed a lot of latex. And okay, great. And so that's fine. Here, come in there. And then we walked into a room with three 20-quart Hobart mixers. And they're like, okay, well, this is where you're going to work, and this and that and the other thing like that. And that turned out to be John Carpenter's The Thing. After that job, I
Wow.
kind of just decided, well, I guess this is what I'm going to do for my career. Might as well,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And
Hey, Rob, I have to ask, at that time when you were working, you must have been the only third generation, like,
yeah,
or really anything. Well, I'm sure there were some people, other people, but in special effects, that must have been just you.
yeah, I can't think of any other right off the top of my head. I know that Michael Stein was second generation because we both went to school together, and then he went on to be a makeup artist as well. But yeah, very, very, very few. There's only the ones that I meet that are third generation now are all like 20 something.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so,
Wow. So John Carpenter, The Thing. So that's amazing. So that's a
yeah,
good way to. Obviously, you had the experience like with your dad, and running especially being that young of age and being a foreman. That's pretty important job to have on a set. So and then you land that. So The Thing.
yeah.
That's how long was that? Like, what was
I
that?
was on the
Were you
thing for
always on
about
set, or were
five.
you always in the lab working?
Yeah, I spent 90% of my career in the lab. Very
Yeah.
little on set work and everything. Back in those early days, almost never on set. Cat People, we did go to set a couple of times just to assist as we made some deliveries, and my dad would say, "Here, stay here and help on this," and so I did a couple of those things. But The Thing, the only time we were on set, wasn't really on set. They set up a little film stage in the back room to do part of the Norris chest bursting effect, you know. But
Yeah, yeah.
other than that, they always shot at Universal on the lot, or we didn't really do any of the effects in Alaska. That was all pretty much, some
Yeah.
stuff got sent up there, but most of it was done at Universal.
Wow. And then from there, so was your dad, when did your dad do this till?
My dad just retired a few years ago.
Oh my
He
gosh,
did.
really? That's awesome.
What's the latest of the shows? Grey's Anatomy, I guess. When Nip Tuck
Oh,
was
okay.
over, he said he was going to retire. He's like, okay, I'm done with that. And then they came with like Grey's Anatomy and another show, Chicago Hope. No, I think that was before it, but he did a lot of TV, a lot of medical shows, a lot of all that stuff. Any of the stuff that you see on TV that really looks real, it was probably his.
Wow, man. And then how long did your grandpa work till? Did he work for a long time too?
He was mostly a prop maker and scenic artist. He did
Oh,
a
okay.
lot of stuff for the prop rental companies and things. He would make stuff for them, skulls and all kind of stuff like that. But he died back in like 1972, 74, something like that. So yeah, he smoked like a chimney and just did not take care. Smoked like a chimney and drank like a fish, and you don't live long
Yeah.
under those circumstances.
No, no.
Yeah.
But wow. So the thing, and then you took off from there. So you said you had a partner. Did you guys start any studios together or anything? Because
No,
I saw in
Dale
some
and
of the
I pretty
credits,
much took
it's the
most of the
Burman
jobs that we
Studios.
got together up until Ghostbusters. At the end of Ghostbusters, they were talking about um, breaking the crew down to less people and stuff, and I was like, I'm burnt out. I'll go. So I left, and he stayed. And then when he stayed, they went on to do like Fright Night and some stuff like that. But I went on to
Yeah.
at my dad's, or after that, I went on to first things I did was for my uncle. We worked on Clan of the Cave Bear and the Howling 2. But then I went over to my
Nice.
dad's and we did Teen Wolf and the Goonies back to back.
Teen Wolf. Would you guys work on the suit? You guys put together the
We
suit?
made we made the Teen Wolf. Yeah, the whole transformation
Nice.
and everything, the whole makeup and all of that stuff. That was good to be. I got to be on
That
set for
is
that a little bit. Jeff Dawn applied for us, and but I went in and helped do some things like nail growing effects and stuff like that.
no, I met Chubbs, the actor who plays Chubbs, Mark Holton. I
Chunk.
interviewed him and then he just happened to be at
Oh,
Chubbs, yeah, the big basketball
yeah.
player.
Oh, all right, okay, yeah,
Yeah. No, but I met him over the summer randomly at
yeah.
some signing in New Jersey. Yeah.
It's amazing the people you bump into in random places. I
Yeah,
ran into
yeah.
a friend of mine walking down the street in Beijing. I mean, how random is that? You know,
What?
looked at each
That's
other
insane.
like, "What the hell are you doing here?" Just
Yeah.
random.
Oh man. So before we talk about some of the other credits, you mentioned Ghostbusters. So I
Yeah.
interviewed Steve Neal,
Uh huh.
who I'm sure you've worked with
Sure.
a
Great.
bunch. And the reason I always think of him is because he's a huge Planet of the Apes fan.
Sure.
So he still, as a hobby, he casts like somehow he got like an original print, I think, from the movie. So he like does his own thing. Is that from you?
They're mine. Yeah. I have original
That is
molds from the
insane.
film, and I pulled copies out of them because they were in such bad shape, and I remastered them, made new molds, and now I'm having him finish off copies, and we're offering them for
That's
collectors.
awesome. That's amazing. It's such a small world. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. The next one he's going to do for me is Close Encounters.
Oh, that's cool. No, I think it's just so it's such a tight knit community. It
Yeah,
seems obviously there's a bunch of movies that were made in the 80s, but it seems like so many people work to with each other. Like I talked to this guy Tim Lawrence,
yeah,
Eddie
Tim.
Yang, like all these different people, and it seemed like everybody knows each other no matter what. Like
In,
Jeffrey
in
Farley,
the
did you ever work with
'80s,
him?
everybody did. What's weird now is I
Yeah.
don't know anybody now. I go out there
Oh
and
yeah, I
talk
bet.
about amongst the industry, and there's, hundreds of people. I'm like, yeah, I don't recognize one of you.
Do
But
you think it's
if
people
you're
are
in
based
the
in
80s, I know your
California?
name, and.
Yeah. Do you think it's because people aren't? Is everybody based in California working at special effects, or with the way the industry are people spread out doing the work, or?
There is a huge amount of people everywhere. When it first started out and everything, there were, a couple of dozen of us in LA that started doing it really, professionally, and then it got to be more, and then there were then they would fly us all over the country and all over the world to do effects in all of these places. And while we were there, we'd pick up assistants, bring in people. Hey, here, so let me show you how to do this. I need help doing this, blah, blah, blah. Well, and those guys got a chance to work on these things and learn how to do the work. And then after 10 years, now they got 10 years experience in doing the work. So now you don't need to fly me to Lithuania to do the job. You got a guy in the country next door who already knows how to do it. So
Yeah.
they don't fly us around as much anymore because there are a lot more of us all over. And then with you talk about things like cosplay and things like that. I mean, it's really worldwide at this point, which is why my rubberware company does so well because everybody wants stuff all over the world now, not just a nose for this production or that kind of thing.
Do you do a lot of custom work? I gotta check out your website, but is it mostly custom, or is it things you have that you've done
I,
in the
I do
past that?
custom work, but we started a company almost 30 years ago,
Oh wow,
making.
with your wife, right? Is that what
Yeah,
I read?
yeah, yeah, rubberware.
Cool.
And we started doing that because I was getting calls for like, we need a pig nose tomorrow. Do you have one? I'm like, well, no, I don't, but. Um, and so it started coming down to, uh, well, let's make pieces to have in stock ahead of time. And then we thought, well, if we're going to do that, let's offer them through the stores rather than having the people come to us, so they can go to the well-stocked makeup store and pick up noses and cuts and wounds and foreheads and
Yeah.
anything alien, this piece and that piece and all that. And so we started doing that in 96, and now we've got a little over 200 pieces and sell them all over the world. And cosplayers love them because this one guy takes our pieces and does the greatest Captain Hook I've ever seen. He's so
Really?
cool looking, just
That's
and
awesome.
that's just a cosplay costume that he does, and so it's great. And now it means I don't have to take every job that comes my way either.
Yeah. Did your wife work in the industry? Is that how you met her, or?
She's a costume designer, and she
Oh, that's neat.
It's why we called our initial company, which is sort of our umbrella company, Sticks and Stones, because we knew everybody was going to talk about us, because we both had, reputational careers before we met. And then when we got married, we knew it was like, well, this is perfect. So she does all our costumes and whatnot. And I do all the prosthetic and lab work and all. And, it allows us the versatility to do just about anything we want to do.
Yeah. Wow, that's really awesome. Did you guys meet on a show?
Um, she was working in a costume shop when she first came to Hollywood, and because she went to college in Hawaii and learned Japanese Hawaiian theater and all of that. But she uh, um, she was working in the costume shop, and a friend of mine went into the costume shop and asked her out. So their first date was he brought her over to my house for a game playing party. And well, you know, it was one of
The
those
rest
things
is
where I'm like, what are
history.
you doing with him? But we didn't start dating till 3 years after that. So it was, but that was
Oh, okay.
when we started dating. It's because I saw her at the Renaissance Fair and pretty much stalked her, walked around the whole place, and would run up and lean against the tree. Hi.
Oh, hey,
Then
you're
they go
here
run up and
too?
lean up against the building. Hey, how you doing? and just followed her all day long until she finally said, "When are you going to ask me out?" And you
Yeah.
know, in all of my virtuous and suave debonair dating ability, I said, "I'm going to Florida tomorrow." So, but I had to go on location for 2 weeks, and I called her when I got back, and we started dating. Our first date was the Magic Castle, and we just had a
Oh, cool.
lovely time. And we probably went out 3 times in the first week we started dating, and then 5 times, and then every night. And she was working on Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. I was working on Batman Returns, and
Oh,
we never
wow.
slept. We just talked. We just communicated, and spent just probably 2 months just talking and just enjoying each other's company, and you know can't help but fall in
That's
love.
awesome. No, you can't. It's usually in the most inopportune times. Like I met my wife. We went to high school together. She was a year older. We ran into her in Atlantic City at
Huh?
like 2 o'clock in the morning. We bumped into each other, and we were like, I was like, oh my god. And then
I
I
know
from
you.
that moment, like yeah, she doesn't believe me. But from that moment, I'm like, man, I'm gonna marry this person. And
That's
then we're
awesome.
married. We've been together 12 years, 2 kids. Like. But no, I was gonna ask because I've talked to some people when they met spouses on shows. I think it's always great because sometimes it's like the worst movie, but it's
Right,
like what spawned from it was a
right,
beautiful thing and a long lasting relationship. That's pretty cool to have somebody that works in kind of the same sector because people are going to buy like the prosthetic. And what do you need with the prosthetic? You need an outfit. So
right,
that's cool that you guys cover all the bases.
right. Yeah, I call working in film in some ways little mini ideal relationships where you get on a show, you meet some people, you're like, hey, you're pretty cool. Hey, we're having fun. That's great and all that. Toward the end of the show, you've been through some stress and you're like, this guy's really getting on my nerves. But then the show's over. Ta-da! It's done. You go your own ways, all that stuff. A couple of years later, you meet up another show. Hey, hi, how you doing? Yeah, we had a great time on that show. That was really great. And after about halfway through the show, you're like, oh yeah, now I remember why I didn't really like it. Yeah, yeah. But then the
Yeah,
show's over, so you go on again. And so you have these little mini wonderful relationships without
you're
a
right.
whole lot of trauma.
Yeah, it's a little summer camp. I helped the actor Larry Hankin write a book, and
Mm,
he talked about like when you're with these people on location for X amount of months, you like become really good friends because they're the only people around. Because it's not like
right,
you had FaceTime, you just had a phone, or
right,
you wrote a letter. So it
right,
was really like, hey, John Aston, you and me are in. She's having a baby with John Hughes. So Larry like became good friends. And he was like really sad when it was over. But then he said he ran into him randomly like years later. And it was like they rekindled this thing that they only had for like 2-3 months. But it's a long time when you see each other every day.
it's as if none of that time left. It was all, you just pick up the highlights.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
So it's so cool that like all the things you've worked on.
Break no teu podcast para te contar como ter mais benefícios nas suas compras. Com o PicPay Card Black. Ele tem o maior cashback entre os cartões Black, 1,2% de cashback. Você faz uma viagem de aplicativo, compra uma roupa, almoça no restaurante e seu dinheiro volta para você a cada compra no crédito. Além disso, ainda tem acesso a mais de 1.400 salas VIP e benefícios que não acabam mais. É ou não é outra experiência? Com o PicPay, a experiência é outra. Abra sua conta.
Sujeito à aprovação. Data de referência 1º de outubro de 2024.
But I think the reason I reached out to you because I think you're in the Canon movie group, and I saw you share something from because you worked on a few. I don't know if the first one was 52 Pickup. Was that your first
One of the
Canon
first
film?
11 films in 8 months, something like
Wow,
that.
that sounds like a Canon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a Canon story right there.
Up and Tough Guys Don't Dance. We did a handful of fairy tales, The Frog Prince,
Yeah.
Little Red Riding Hood. What else did I do? Beauty and the Beast, John Savage. We did Gore, a movie called Gore, Gor. I think there was a book before. I don't know. That was the biggest thing I ever sculpted was on Gore. That was a 2,000
Really?
pounds of clay insert section of a dragon's shoulders so that the guy could sit on it and they could do insert shots of the dragon flying, So it was huge.
Wow.
We did Going Bananas with Dom DeLuise and made a
Wow.
chimpanzee suit for a talking chimp. That was my first and only chimp to date. Yeah,
No, because I always just hear stories of the documentaries. Like they obviously, cut corners a lot when it came to, when they got things done. That's why I'm wearing my Bronson shirt for a little homage to your Canon days. But I always think it's so interesting. And I always think it's so cool whenever I interview people, I look at IMDb's, obviously everything you've worked on, like when you worked with your father or when you're working on, even like Ghostbusters isn't on here because they don't have, for some reason, people don't get all their credits, especially behind the scenes.
Well, because I don't have credit on Ghostbusters.
No, I know. That's what I mean.
Department head, and I don't even have my credit on the movie because, there were too many credits submitted and they didn't want to put an extra spool of film on the end, so they cut like 36 of our credits. So
that's terrible.
Ridiculous. Most of those films, Batman Returns, I don't think I have credit on.
Oh no, that's on here. You're definitely. I saw that on here.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you got that one.
Yeah, and the thing which was important to me. I'm really glad I got that one. So
yeah,
and The Fly was
what I was saying was it's the Fly's a great one.
Yeah.
But it's so cool because people work on so many different movies. But I always pick a few to watch that I've never seen before, and one that really honestly blew me away, and I'm surprised. Maybe because it never got a re-release like a lot of those movies do, like Vinegar Syndrome or some of those companies. But World Gone Wild, that is an insane movie. What a twisted opening scene!
Because they just made me department head, makeup and hair and everything. I was in charge of all of it, but I couldn't do a straight makeup to save my life. So when I walked in there, I took my two assistants. They're like, "Well, we've got these two people that we like to use, usually and everything, and you don't have to use them if you don't want to, but if you'd like, we could bring them in." I'm like, "Yeah, bring them in, bring in those two people." And so they had their makeup artists that they liked and all of that stuff. This woman and this older man, and that was great. So all I had to do was worry about the prosthetics and. What weird stuff. I mean, that hubcap gag is really freaking ridiculous. But, it was fun. 5 weeks in Arizona. Yeah. I enjoyed doing the work. Great actors. Went club hopping with Adam Ant in Tucson. I mean, how random is that?
That's very random. Just Bruce Dern. I don't know if the years almost make sense, I think, off the top of my head. The Burbs. Maybe The Burbs is 88, but I watched The Burbs a lot. Me and my wife's one of our favorite movies, and he just carries himself. He does that in a lot of movies the way Bruce Dern is, but in this movie, when he first shows up in that opening scene, I'm like, this is him from across the street.
It's consummate Bruce Dern performance.
Yeah, it's so good.
Fact, I don't really think he was performing. I think he was just being Bruce in that movie.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, and another one which I bet was a lot of fun, just because of the special effects that were involved, and I've never heard of it. And I think the same thing as World Gone Wild is Meet the Hollowheads.
Oh, my dad's film that he directed.
That your dad directed that movie?
Huh?
That's amazing. Was that his first, or did he do that often?
Well, yeah, first. Yeah, his first and pretty much only. He did the Making Apes thing recently with another guy who's director, but yeah, Meet the Hollowheads was originally titled Life on the Edge, and he wrote and directed it.
Holy crap.
The only thing I don't like about that movie was that the producers got freaked out midway through that it was maybe too weird, so they kept trying to get him to pull back on it a little bit. And it could have been so much more fun with the things that we did, like the son's instrument, the chicken-looking thing, and all that stuff. We had great ideas of all kinds of things that were going to happen, and producers, money people don't sometimes understand the creativity of an artist. So they panicked, and still kind of fun. Matt Shackman.
Yeah, the special effect. Juliet.
Kid, do you know who that kid is? Matt Shackman.
No, I had the
He used
IMDb.
to
Let
be
me
on
see. Is
Just
he?
10 of Us, which was a sitcom, but he's a
Oh yeah,
director now.
really?
He directs things like, I don't know, little
Oh
shows.
my God, WandaVision, Game of Thrones. Wow.
Great kid. He used to hang out in my shop after he finished filming the movie because he was a total effects fan. So he'd hang out at my house, which I had my shop in a garage, and he'd come over there from time to time. Good kid.
But the people your dad was able to get was like unbelievable. Like Joshua Miller, at that time, he was
because
like
he was just fresh
every.
off of things like Near Dark.
Oh yeah, he was in everything. Every '80s movie, Teen Witch, like every weird one too. Like he's in the one that the kids they wish for their dad to hear their dad died, and they wish for him to come back, and he comes back in a robot. It was like an 80s weird movie, but he's in that. He's in like everything. And John Glover at this point, that was man.
My favorite John Glover role has got to be Scrooged.
Oh yeah,
He plays the TV executive. That's a great role.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's so cool. Your dad gets to direct that.
Where I blew him up.
52 pickup. The immortal 52 pickup. That's like an interesting canon movie because that was supposed to be one of their early movies,
right?
And then it got shelved,
right?
Because I interviewed Sam Furstenberg, who did a lot of the ninja movies for canon, and he was in Israel, and he was going to work on 52 pickup, but then they ended up something happened, and then it didn't get made for 10 years later,
right?
So many cool things, and then. So what would you say over your career? Is there like a moment that was like the cool? I think what you do is so cool. So is there something that you've done that you think is like the coolest? Like when you see it like on film that you were like, holy shit, I made that.
If you want to talk the work in itself, I think the stuff we did for Ghostbusters is amazing. And it's a film that I will still sit and watch every single time I see it on. The Fly is great, amazing work, deserved the Academy Award that year, I thought. A lot of that stuff. There's, every show has a certain amount of things that I like about it, but some of our best work would be like the Power Rangers movie, the costumes for that. Having my wife involved to be able to do them just really took us, I think, our work to another level. But I'll say my name dropping story, that's the proudest moment of my career, pretty much, because it is such a big name dropping moment. My brother brought me in. My brother was working on. He did the Tom Cruise makeup in Tropic Thunder. Where he plays the studio executive.
So your brother's in the industry too?
Oh yeah. My brother's got the Oscar for 2009's Star Trek.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Anyway, he hired me to work with him on Mission Impossible 3. And I was coming in to babysit they do the transformation mask where they pull it on and, the Mission Impossible gag. So they've got this box which got some masks in it of different stages of Philip Seymour Hoffman and stuff like that. And so I'm supposed to watch all of those things for him while he's off making up Philip so he can do the neck piece. So Philip goes like this, and then they go to a mask where Tom pulls off the mask and it's Tom, So they're doing the scene where they're making the mask and going to take it off and put it on Tom while my brother's off working. So all of a sudden I hear them calling for my brother. And so I walk in, I'm like, what can I do? I don't, he's off making up Philip. And I look around the room and it's Tom Cruise, J.J. Abrams, Ving Rhames, the head of Paramount, Michelle Burke, who's the department head, the first AD, and my brother's assistant. And they're all looking at me. And JJ's like, can we make these eyebrows stay on the mask? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Do we have extra eyebrows? Yeah, no problem. Okay, great. Give me these. Okay, I looked at my brother's assistant and said, go mix up some silicone, or go get some silicone and mix it on the way back. Like, okay, great. And I looked at the first AD and I said, I need 5 minutes. And the first AD goes, okay, we'll find something to do in the 5 minutes. And so, Hugo comes back. I put the eyebrows on. I stick them down. The silicone setting. Okay, great. It's about done. I go up to the first AD. I go, okay, I'm done now. You guys can go. And he looks at his watch. He goes, that's 3 minutes. I go, sorry, and walked away. And I was so proud of myself because that morning I found out that production was costing on that show $65,000 a minute.
What?
And I had asked for 5 of them. And then when I delivered in 3, I'm like, I just saved you $130,000. And they were like, yay, Rob! So that's kind of my big name dropping moment and kind of proudest moment of my career because of the people that were involved,
Yeah, and the pressure.
I'm the only person to save it at the moment.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How about for so Batman Returns you worked on? Did you work on DeVito or?
They brought me in originally because they were so far behind, and I made most of the molds for the Penguin and Danny DeVito costume. Made his full body master. I made the thing for his hips and his belly and all these things. I engineered the belly so that it was jiggly and all of that kind of stuff for his full-on costume. And then they moved me to, when his molds were finished, I moved to finishing, and I started doing patching and seaming and fixing of reject parts that for Batman and Catwoman pieces and things like that.
Wow.
I worked on cowls for Catwoman, fixing stitches and fixing suits and all of little details. Sorry. If a piece had
That's okay.
Hey! Stop it. If a piece had a hole in it or something, I fix it, or a seam down the back or something.
Yeah.
Ta-da! So,
like my dogs, they can sense like a dog like 3 houses down walking and they just go nuts. And I look outside and I'm like, there's nobody here. And then like a minute later, a dog's walking past.
Right. Well, they're getting close to feeding time, so I guess they're getting a little irritable.
They're getting a little antsy.
Like, come on, you guys got like 45 minutes till dinner, so stop it.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. Man, one I have to ask about because I think it's an infamous movie just because of everything that was involved, but Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah,
because that one I talked to
for 13 seconds worth of footage. My work, anyway.
Really?
Yeah. All I did was the killing of King Koopa. So
we did really?
Stage 1 on Dennis Hopper with a big smile. Stage 2 on another actor that had an even bigger smile and all these teeth and kind of lizard skin and all of that. And then 2 more stages that were animatronic puppets that were up in a big cement thing hanging in the sky. So, and then everything between that is all some of the worst CG you ever saw in your life. But so my stuff is seen literally for 13 seconds.
Isn't it crazy? Like when you're working on that, can you guess? Well, I guess when you have the script and you know what you're doing, do you have any idea of like, do they say, okay, Rob, we need this to be X amount of seconds long or anything like that? No,
I never got any of that. We just knew what the sequence was going to look like, and what the heads kind of needed to do. My friend Bud McGrew did the animatronics inside, and I did all the cosmetic skins and the makeup and things like that for the puppets. Um, but the day we arrived on set in North Carolina, the directors left. They quit.
Wow.
So I was directed by the camera guy, Dean Semler, awesome cinematographer. I mean, no complaints at all, but he was our director for the whole sequence and everything. I was happy. I got paid well for the job, and I got 3 weeks on a SAG contract, so I'm good. It was great.
Yeah, the check clears. That's what matters.
Yeah. Well, I learned a long time ago watching my father in the industry that in the end, ultimately, all you really get out of the project is your pictures. There's a movie, but the work in it is not really your work. It's a combination of everybody's work involved. So, but your work, what you do, what you're proud of, all you get is your photographs of it. So I take good photographs of the things that I do and try to maintain those. But what they do in the film, I don't really care.
Yeah. No, you're right. So do you keep, since you have your own shop, I know obviously because there's new things you're working on, and so it's hard to keep a lot of stuff, but are there some things that you've kept along the way, like you're working on the thing, or scripts? Do you keep anything like
Most
that?
of the stuff that I work on rots out if it's made out of rubber. It doesn't last.
Oh, that's true.
I've got the molds for the things. If I want to cast them, I can. If it's something that I made myself, whatever. If it's something from an old film, something else, not really. I used to have some pieces from Ghostbusters, but their foam rotted out and whatnot. So I think I have an eye from a miniature terror dog, but it's just a little red.
Oh yeah.
It's just a little red ball with an LED in it. So big deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, a guy made a special collectible, and he sent me a copy of it because it's supposed to be from a mold of the original that I sculpted. But it happens to be the thing that I think is the most ridiculous thing I've ever been asked to sculpt. So it's like, well, sort of bittersweet. It's like, yay, I got this, but oh my God, it's that. It was Frank the Rabbit from Donnie Darko.
Oh, yo, you worked on that. Wow. You think that's
sculpted his face for my friend. That's all I did. And kept going, what the hell? This is what he wants, right? Okay. Oh, this thing's ridiculous. It looked like Bugs Bunny's skull on acid, and he loved it. He thought it was great, and everybody was happy, but crazy. And then now, I'm making displays of the makeups that I do in my classes. If I do a really cool.
I was going to ask how your classes. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing that? Working at Stan Winston?
Well, I only did those 2 videos for Stan Winston's, but I've been teaching most of my career. I've only been like 2009. I guess I started getting paid to teach. I worked at Joe Blasco's school and started doing some things there and developed my own, because they didn't have any programs. So I developed my own program and set it all up. And then I started traveling it to different places. And now I do it in my lab as well. So, because you're never going to learn in a school, or you're going to learn in a school, but you're never going to work in a school. So I teach in my lab, which is a functioning effects lab. And so you really get an idea of what it's like to be on a job, especially when there's other jobs going on around you while you're learning, But then I develop these characters, anything I like to do. And, it's nice not having to get up early and go on set. And it's nice to be able to kind of spill my information before the new generations who don't know yet. Now I can tell them about the old days too, and this is what they used to do then, and now that's what we do now, or then we did this, and now you're doing that, and so I can really give them some background and history of all of it. Most of my students don't leave after I've taught them. They kind of hang out,
Yeah.
you know. Some become assistants sometimes. Some go out and get jobs and then come back and do their job here because, they don't have a spot of their own. And, I've got space and then I can coach them through their job. And so they really enjoy that.
That's awesome. No, because I think I don't like CG that much at all. So when it comes to the practical,
it does what it does well. I
no,
think
it does.
it's
Yeah.
best when you do both. If you're going to do a monster for a movie, do it practical. It looks best, and then use CG to fix everything that didn't work.
Yeah,
Looks
no, that makes
great.
sense.
Everybody
Yeah.
gets a job, and it's fabulous. You can use CG to do the things that are kind of impossible for the practical thing to do. And then everybody gets a job.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. That makes a lot of sense. I just hate when movies just do CG. I
Sure.
just love knowing
unless
that
it's a Pixar
what
movie,
went into that
those are my
practical
favorite
effect. Oh yeah, no.
movies. If it's a Pixar movie, I don't care. CG is great. If you put reality in a CG in a Pixar movie, it looks weird.
Yeah. Did you ever dabble when that whole change happened? Did
No.
you ever dabble in CG at all?
No, not really. I did a weekend, an Adobe Photoshop weekend, because they wanted us to do a bunch of Universal horror movie monsters and stuff, and I had done a Frankenstein, so they brought me in to do the Frankenstein, and we spent a day taking pictures of all these great characters, the Wolf Man and the Gill Man and all of that stuff, and then for the next 2 days we made movie posters with them. So that was
Cool.
fun, but I'd never opened a Photoshop program before, and I have not since. I play with clay, I have some of my sculptures
Yeah.
scanned. I just recently did anyway, so I'm gonna experiment with the prints from that and making stuff out of it. But nah, I play with clay.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Has a lot changed in it, like from the material end of it? I know you said like when you're teaching the students like what changed over the years, but is like clay. Is there much changes that was done to clay since when you started?
There's dozens of different versions of clay out there, but we pretty much stick to one or two. I use a water-based clay. I use an oil-based clay, and brands to me are not important or any of that stuff. I don't really care as long as it feels right and does what I need it to do. They've adapted some makeup materials, things like that. We use a lot more silicone for prosthetics these days than foam latex, but for a long time people are like, oh my God, silicone's going to kill foam latex, but the truth is they both work for what they both work for best, and
Yeah.
and they're all just more tools for the toolbox is all. But it's good
Yeah.
to know why we went from this material to this material to this material over time, because then well, God, I can always go back to this one if I need to, and it's part of why I called my company Sticks and Stones, not only because everybody would talk about it, but because really about the basics. It's really about your foundation, and your sticks and your stones. You know how to build things from scratch. You are much more able to create and provide a product for a company.
Yeah. Are you getting, I know you're doing the prosthetics and people, through your website and your company are you doing things for movies still? I'm sure people will reach out to you, right?
What was the last movie I did? It's been a couple of years now, but uh, they come to me for little things sometimes. like I said, my students come to me to do movies all the time, because they're
Yeah,
always
that's gotta
doing
be cool.
short films and whatnot, and all that stuff. So, there's a little bit. I think maybe the last thing. There's a great makeup artist that I came up with that we were trained kind of together, but he was older than me and was my dad's worked at my dad's place, Francisco Perez, and he brings me shows every once in a while. We did one a couple of years ago called Mr. Brooks with
Oh yeah,
Kevin
Kevin
Costner.
Costner, right?
He does Kevin Costner's
Yeah.
movies. He does all that stuff. So we did a body for Mr. Brooks, and then he brought me a half a dozen effects or so for Netflix's The Babysitter, and that was fun doing that.
Oh yeah.
Just
Oh, that's a
cool,
great. I
crazy.
love that movie.
I love it. It's along the lines of what is it, Tucker and Dale? I just love
Yeah,
those.
exactly.
It's like, wait, you guys, what? It's just fun,
Yeah, no.
entertaining.
And what's her name? That I'm pulling up her name because I feel so bad because I love her. Samara
What was
Weaving.
that?
She's one of the. I feel like every movie she's in is a hit.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, she's smart. She's got great management and knows how to negotiate things right and all of that stuff. It's just it's good management. Really, really comes down to that. And and if it's not her management, it's because she's smart enough to control her management and do it the way she wants to. So
Yeah. Wow, this has been so much fun. I love talking to people behind the scenes because I think and like even in my head before we started talking because I've talked to other people like Steve Neal, like I mentioned, Eddie
right.
Yang, Tim Lawrence, and it's like everybody, the tight knit community of it. I think that's what the coolest thing out. Like it's people working together. On the other side, it's like, hey, we're going for this role. I know obviously people interview to do special effects on movies and shows and stuff.
Sure.
But I think it's pretty awesome, and I love the fact that just your whole family. That is insane. You had no choice. You and your brother had no choice of. Or is it just you and your brother, or is there another sibling?
No, well, when my brother and I grew up, my father remarried and they adopted a son who's now 30 something, I guess. Um, but he invented a program called Kit Bash 3D for CG people to do environments. It's backgrounds and all that stuff, but it's a kit. So you can buy the kit and assemble it the way you want to and customize it any way you want to or all that. And now that gets used in all of these other top game companies and things like that and all that. So, yeah, he just moved his whole company of like 30 employees up to Portland, Oregon on his dime. So I think he's doing all right.
Yeah, he's doing good. Your dad had like this magic touch. The fact that man, amazing. The fact that he was doing it up until
His brother, my
uh,
uncle Ellis, I know he did the makeup for Christopher Lloyd in the Back to the Future movies and whatnot, but he goes back. He did the makeup on All in the Family, and then he
wow.
went into mechanical effects and stuff, and he machined all the parts for the Terminator.
Oh my god.
So my grandfather and his kids, all his kids used to make dummies and things like that for them. But then my uncle and my dad started the first effects company off the major studio lots with John Chambers because John had a contract with the CIA and couldn't do the work under the eyes of the studios, so they left the studios and started their own place. And then John left, and my dad and my uncle kept their places, and then my dad kept his place when my uncle and he split up, and um, you know, my other uncle, my mom's
Wow.
brother, was head of makeup on things like NYPD Blue and all those old cop shows, and Falcon Crest, and you know, so
It was a family affair. You
I,
guys could have done your own movie.
I say we're a
Everyone.
lot like the Westmore family, but the Burmans didn't have
Yeah.
a publicist.
Oh man, this has been awesome, Rob. I know you just mentioned it, but Terminator, but you worked on Terminator 2, right?
I came in and did some foam work for them for a couple of weeks. Yeah.
That's awesome.
They were having trouble getting something worked out, and so I came in and worked out their problems and then left to do Superboy.
Superboy, yeah.
The Adventures of Superboy.
Oh man. Oh, this has been so cool. No, I loved I'm happy we were able to connect.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks for sharing your story. That's so cool. Because you don't know much when you look at somebody's IMDb or you see their names in a credit, like it's really wild, just your whole family history.
Right.
Like in the industry. And the fact that there was people that obviously they were related, like your uncle was related to your mom, but the fact that just everyone, that's insane.
We were a very magnetic family, and the people that gravitated toward us benefited by learning how to do it and work in the industry and have careers and all that stuff. And very open people. My father, very giving and open and wonderful. He'd take all the neighborhood kids near his shop, who he didn't know any of these kids. He'd go take them out on his boat on the weekends and things like that. So, it was a fun environment. Great place to be.
That's awesome. It's so cool that you are giving back and able to teach the next generations and then, keep that going.
I get to be the smartest guy in the room. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it, man.
Sure, anytime.
Those dogs can get fed now. They'll be happy.
That's right. You come back around and we'll do it again.
Man, wasn't Rob great? Talk about some amazing stories of working in film, but it's so cool with him because his studio worked on so many movies and he doesn't have the credits. I specifically, loved personally Teen Wolf, the stories about working on that and do the suit for man, that's one of my favorite movies. Goonies, Batman Returns, just Rob was a great guy. Thank you, Rob, and be sure to check out his website if you want to buy like something for Halloween or just for fun if you're in filmmaking or special effects, rubberware. I'll make sure I put the link in the episode notes. So your homework, Howling 2, it's free on Tubi, Pluto, wherever you can find it. Check it out. Don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only, and don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys.